There you go. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you too. There's Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello?
Hi, Jeff.
I didn't see your name on the list there. Bill?
I am Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Alex. You're
Actually,
Alex Aranelli.
I'm on there twice, so I got my
Alex
computer and my iPad both up there.
Aranelli.
Aranello.
Aranello. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Alex. Bill Fox, Fox Tuttle Transportation Group. And I'm going to write down attendance. So can I'm sorry about being a little late. Catherine?
Yeah, we just started here, and we'll go around and
Okay.
wait a couple minutes as the people log in here.
Okay, good.
Brian.
There's Stanley.
Hey, was that Jeff? Said that?
How are you?
Good. I see you, Jeff.
Good.
Anybody been on 88th Street lately?
Oh yeah, it looks beautiful.
Great.
What's the plan? They're putting some houses in there toward the little pond?
Well, the town turned that development down. It was going to be 180 apartment units. The board turned it down. They wanted some commercial, kind of a mixed use development. So who knows what's going to happen on that one.
Okay. The street looks great.
Thanks.
Yeah, now the other side of the highway needs to be spruced up a little bit to Monarch High School.
On that side?
That's for someone else to work with.
That's right.
That's Louisville, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, that'd be Louisville, I believe.
Betsy DeVos.
Okay. We've got 13 and 14 participants here. I am going to go around. My name is Alex Aranello. I'm Director of Public Works for the town of Superior. Bill, why don't you introduce yourself? Bill's our traffic consultant.
Bill Fox with Fox Tuttle Transportation Group.
I'm going to go around and call on each of you, and if you can just tell us how long you've lived in the area, give us your address so we can record that, so we can have an attendance list. So Brian, you're first up on my screen there.
I'm at 925 East Riverbend Street. I don't know, Stan probably remembers better than I do how long I've been here. We were neighbors, so it's more than 10 years now, I guess.
Yep, I agree.
Got that, Bill? Okay, yep. Carolyn. Now, Matthew. Matthew, we're introducing ourselves and giving your address. Why don't you give us your address and how long you lived in this neighborhood?
Sure. Yeah, we're 1200 South Montgomery, just right off of Riverbend there, and we've been here for a little over 3 years.
Thank you. Boy, keep changing who's on here. Okay, Stan, why don't you go?
Yeah, I'm Stan Jarrett. I live at 935 East Riverbend, and I've been a resident since 1991.
Catherine Pick. You're muted, Catherine. You're muted, Catherine. Try it again.
Hear me now?
A little bit closer, maybe.
A little bit louder.
Why don't you go to somebody else and I'll get this straightened out.
We can hear you now.
Okay. So I live at 915 East Riverbend, and I've lived here since 2005.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey, did we get you? Jeff? You
No,
have your
Jeff.
address right there.
Yeah, why not? Let's make it official. Jeffrey Knott, 985 East Riverbend. I'm one house up from the corner of Akron. I've lived here for 20 years.
Great. Abby, can you unmute and give us your address?
1164 East Akron Place, and we've been here for 29 years.
Thanks, Abby. Brian, we got you. Melinda, unmute.
Hello. We're at 1181 East Riverbend, and we've been here 13 years.
Oh, longtime residents. Adam.
Hi, Adam Mirapod, live at 945 East Riverbend. We've been here 2 years.
Okay. Newbie. We got Matthew, Carolyn. Tom, can you unmute, Tom?
Hi, everybody. This is Tom and Joan Mickus, 905 East Riverbend Street, and I think we're up to 23 years now.
Great. And then I see a Hans, Hanze. Can you unmute? Hans, is that a first name or a last name? Hansze. Okay, well, I can't get him. Shane Mood.
Hi there, I'm Shane Mood. I'm at 1191 East Riverbend. I'm Melinda Tan's favorite neighbor. She was just on a minute ago. And we've been here since 2004, so 16 years.
Great. Greg Wilson.
Hi, Greg Wilson. I'm at 1144 East Akron Place, and we've been at this house 7 years, but we've been on Weldona earlier than that. We moved there in like 98.
Okay, and I have a phone number of 303-638-2182. Can you identify yourself?
Yeah, that's me again. I logged in on the phone. I'll probably drop off on the Zoom in a little bit. So
Okay.
that's Greg again.
It's Greg. All right. Anybody else on the call? If not, we'll get started. We have a little presentation to go through. Bill and I will kind of be a tag team and go through some data that we have collected in your neighborhood. Talk about the process, neighborhood traffic calming program process. We'll talk about some potential measures that might be applicable, but then it's really up to you to help us out. We're going to be facilitators and resources, but we want you to identify what the problem is, and we got some ideas on solutions, but really it's just a toolbox for you to come up with what could be appropriate measures for your neighborhood. So let's see if I can even. There we go. Okay. So just to give you a neighborhood traffic calming overview, This is a community-wide holistic approach to road safety. It's really looking at the neighborhood and what we can do to make it more livable, more compatible with what you'd like to see in terms of traffic speeds and volumes and so forth. It outlines the responsibilities of the residents, staff, and our town board. We also have a transportation and safety committee, and they really are the guiding force on this process, what the outcomes will be. We're presenting hopefully a plan to them and provide them input on and your feelings about the plan, and they will make recommendations on how to proceed. If there's major financial impacts on the town board will get involved in making those decisions. So the process clearly identifies the problem, evaluation, we provide tools, and then the installation of whatever comes out of the planning process. Our overview, I'll present a little flow chart in a minute, but it outlines a petition review process and then removal criteria if that happens to be the case. And the timeline from request to installation is set by the NTC process. I know you're all probably frustrated because you probably started this process well over a year ago and we haven't gotten very far. Obviously COVID got in the way, but we really want to get buy-in from the neighborhood. We don't want to put some devices in and then have an uproar, backlash from people that don't like them. So we want you to help us identify what measures to implement and get the buy-in from your neighborhood. We'd ask for respect for the process, even when you're not convinced of the outcome. We want you to voice your opinions, to let us know if we're on the right track. We're here as resources, facilitators, experts in how to design traffic calming measures and what their effectiveness would be. So this is the flow chart for the process. Begins with project initiation, and your Stan, I think, kind of spearheaded putting together the petition. So we received that. We collected data last fall. So we've collected volume data, speed data, crashes, all sorts of stuff. We'll be sending that to you in a minute. We reviewed the eligibility of the based on the speed data, whether this program is eligible. There are some marginal criteria that may or may not have been met. We presented those to the Transportation and Safety Committee back in December last year. They gave us the go-ahead to go out and do outreach with the neighborhood to work with you to come up with a traffic calming plan. So you can see the pink box is where we're at. We're doing this neighborhood meeting. We're going to go through a lot of data and various measures that may be applicable, and then have you guys kind of develop the plan yourselves, and we'll facilitate, but hopefully this plan is really a buy-in by your group. This is a graphic. It first shows up above what streets are eligible. We don't want to do no traffic calming on streets like McCaslin or Colton or Rock Creek Parkway, where we carry a significant amount of traffic. It's really intended for collector and local streets. We have a criteria of, why don't you explain 85th percentile, Bill, what that means and how we collect speed data and how to use it.
Sure, we're going to talk about the 85th percentile speed a number of times tonight. So what is that and why do we do it? If we measure the speed of all the vehicles going by a particular point over the course of a day, and we categorize how fast folks are going, and the 85th percentile speed is simply the speed at which 15% of the traffic is going faster than that speed. And why do we use that measure? Well, engineers have kind of used the 85th percentile speed as a probable or a reasonable place to post the speed limit. And we're under the premise that we want most of the people to be obeying the law and driving within the speed limits. And so the 85th percentile speed is used for that. And then we often feel that the problem is not really significant until the 85th percentile speed is 5 miles an hour more than the posted speed limit. So it just gives us a benchmark or a metric when we look at speeding data in a neighborhood.
So we also look at traffic volumes, and we'll get a little bit into this, show you what the traffic volumes are at various locations in your neighborhood. Our criteria is 500 vehicles per day. As being over that, you look at, well, volume could be an issue, and that's where we should spend our money, not on cul-de-sacs that have, a couple hundred vehicles per day. It's really on streets that have a significant volume, and we define that as 500 vehicles per day. And then, Bill, you want to explain what this graphic's talking about?
Sure. So the importance of controlling speed in a residential neighborhood, and one way to think about it is if you're a pedestrian and you're walking in the roadway and you are struck by a car, if the car is going 25 miles an hour, you have a 75% chance of surviving that impact. If the car is going 35 miles an hour, you only have a 40% chance of surviving that impact. The speed is related to kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is a function of the square of the velocity or the speed, so it's not a linear relationship. The faster cars go, you're much more likely to be injured or seriously injured. And so this is why we think it's so important, and you think it's so important, to mitigate speed within your neighborhood.
So just the history of your development there, and in the 70s and 80s and 90s, when the suburban developments were being developed, and we had cul-de-sacs. Everybody likes to live on a dead-end cul-de-sac, which means traffic builds on other streets that are called collectors. And we would design speeds. We want to pick a design speed, and often on a local street, we want a 25 mile an hour design speed. Well, we build in factors of safety. So when you do curves and other things, you have a factor of safety. So you end up with a street that you can easily go 30, 35 miles an hour. You don't have design controls to limit speeds. It's really to allow traffic to go in wet weather and to not lose control and so forth. That philosophy is kind of changing, and people are looking around the country, hey, we need to design streets from the get-go with traffic calming in mind to look to put limits on how fast you can go. A good example, if you go to downtown Superior, we have a number of design controls. We have always stops, we have raised intersections, we have neck downs, we have a number of controls where we've built in the controls to really limit how fast you can go. This particular graphic is a criteria that we developed about 15 years ago, and actually put it in our design standards to look at unimpeded street length. If you think of some streets, if they're very long and there's no reason to stop, like an always stop or a speed bump or a really tight curve, you're gonna get speeding if you get on a local street more than 1,200 feet of unimpeded street length. And then there's some volume criteria, so you really want to look at how long the street is and how can you interrupt that unimpeded length so you force traffic to slow down or come to a complete stop. And so overall, the speeds will stay in that 25 mile an hour range. Another criteria we look at is our crashes. And in your neighborhood, we haven't had a significant crash history. This is the last 9 years of data. We have nothing on Riverbend south of Montgomery. North of Union, there was one. You can see those two green dots are really where the crashes have occurred. Now, you may know of other crashes, but they were probably not recorded in the data that I've been able to obtain. So it doesn't look like you have a significant crash history. But again, we don't want to wait till a serious accident occurs. We want to make sure that we do something that limits speed to make sure there's protected crossings and so forth. So this is your neighborhood. I know there were people on Riverbend, there were people on Akron that both wanted to do something. So we took the whole neighborhood, and that's why we're having this meeting to look at what we can do. So we don't just put one street and then we divert traffic to another street. Let's look at the whole neighborhood from a holistic standpoint. I talked about unimpeded street length, and here's some of the calculations from on Riverbend. So if you start from Coal Creek, Riverbend doesn't look like it has any stops until you get to Akron. There's an always stop at Akron and Riverbend. There's some gentle curves, but I bet you these are 35 miles an hour. It's nothing that's gonna really slow you down significantly. So there's a significant stretch over 1,700 feet without an impediment to slow you down. On Akron, from Coal Creek to Riverbend, it's about 860 feet. So it's getting close to the 900-foot criteria that we had. And then on Riverbend from Akron over to this other stretch of Riverbend, 750 feet. So that one stretch of Riverbend meets our unimpeded length criteria that we probably want to put something in there to slow traffic down. The others don't, although Akron is getting close. Our traffic volumes. So we took traffic counts in November of last year. These are the traffic
Somebody asked him
volumes.
about what's going on the other side of 88th. And they said, no, the town turned the whole thing down. Told you that. Don't act like it was stunned. You even read it to me.
Is that someone that's needing to talk here?
Over by the pine, over by the reservoir on 88th Street, where the prairie dog town was.
Okay, if you have a specific question, let me know. So the volumes on Akron around the Montgomery Court area is about 510 vehicles per day. That's total of both directions.
This is Montgomery Court, right?
Right here.
Yep.
Okay. And then Akron has about 360 in this area where we counted it. Riverbend, 356. That's an average of a couple of days of counts. I'll show you a little more specific breakdown in a minute. And then Riverbend was 280. So the volumes aren't real high. These are the 85th percentile speeds. And so we have actually measured in both directions up on Riverbend between Montgomery and Akron, about 26 miles per hour going northbound, 24 miles an hour going southbound. Akron's 23 in one direction, 21 in the other direction. These are the highest speeds on Riverbend between Akron and Indiana. And that's 27 miles an hour in northbound direction and 25 miles an hour in the other direction.
Excuse me,
Riverbend is 25 miles an hour in each of those directions. And let me just give you a little more breakdown. So these are the dates that these traffic counts were taken last year.
I think Catherine was trying to get your attention, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying.
Catherine, yeah, can you speak up a little bit? Hard to hear you.
So my question was when this data was taken, and this was 3 days in November of 2019.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we have like on Riverbend at count station 1. Here's how the 280 was calculated. We took all these volumes and then averaged them all. So in both directions, but we do give you top speeds that were measured. So we did have 33 miles an hour in each direction as the top speed, and we get the number of vehicles over the speed limit. In Riverbend at Count Station 2, we had speeds as high as 40 miles an hour. Over on Akron, in this location, top speeds were 36 miles an hour and 33 miles in the other direction. And then same kind of top speeds on Riverbend near Montgomery. So we have that data, and we have data broken down out by hour, various times of the day. So there's a lot of data that goes into this. I'll stop there. Is there any question about the data? I know there's always questions, did you put the counters in the right spot or whatever? I don't think we're here to argue whether you meet the criteria or not. I think we're really looking at what can we do to put some measures in to keep traffic, keep traffic down from that 40 miles an hour, 36 miles an hour, keep those speeds much lower.
Hey, Alex, Jeff Nutt. I apologize. I have to leave the meeting, but I can get the notes from my neighbor Stan.
Sure.
Catch you on the next one. I apologize for that.
No problem. All right, we're going to talk about, I know Stan or someone had mentioned about the issues of cut-through traffic and how people are using, maybe people from Amherst neighborhood or Waldona neighborhood, using it to cut through the neighborhood. So I asked Bill to do a little analysis of whether there is attractiveness for a cut-through route. So Bill, can you go through that, and I'll try to explain some of this, all these lines on the map.
Sure. So in this this graphic, we asked ourselves, if you lived in the Amherst neighborhood in the upper right-hand corner there where Alex is indicating, how likely would you be to cut through the neighborhood on Akron, say to go to Costco, or would you go down Coal Creek Drive to Rock Creek Parkway and then stay as minimal of neighborhood cut through route? And so we calculated what we thought the time and distance and number of stops and turns would be on both of those routes. And we concluded that the red route was, Route 1 was the longer route, but the one that's less likely to be considered a cut through. And that route, if you go to the graph again, next page, Alex, we concluded that that route was quite a bit longer. And it would is 1.25 miles compared to 9/10 of a mile in the other routes. And we looked at the speeding and what we thought the time it would take to go through there. And the route the two routes would be about the same time, 2.8 minutes to 3 minutes, but the green route would be so much shorter. So we concluded that people would be likely to cut through from the Amherst neighborhood along Akron over to Rock Creek Parkway and get to the shopping area over by Costco. So that in this comparison, we believe there's legitimate incentive to cut through. So that
I don't know if you could read that. I also calculated, well, what happens during school periods when now you're at a 20 mile an hour school zone through this area that slows you up. So I calculated maybe it takes 3.1 minutes to use the red route versus 3 minutes to use the green route.
Right.
So and that comparison kind of says, hey, it could be an attractive cut through route.
Right.
Can I get some reaction to that? And what do you think about?
Yes.
Do you think of getting cut through traffic?
Alex, Bill?
Yes.
Yes.
So since I live on East Akron and I'm down close to the stop sign that's along Coal Creek, I would say, I'm not like I'm standing there counting cars, but I think it would be not unrealistic to say that 75% of the traffic that's coming through on Akron is cut through. And they're all going either Waldona Amherst, the neighborhoods down through there, it's definitely higher volume during like pre-COVID, during rush hour times. And then also people who are cutting through to go over, they would go left on Riverbend to get the kids over to the elementary school. So absolutely, it's cut through traffic.
Any other reactions from others?
Yeah, I live right next to Abby, and I'm on Akron as well. So, yeah, I would agree with her assessment. I see a lot of people coming up on from Amherst, turning right onto Akron, and then coming up from Wildona. So.
This is Catherine Pickup on Riverbend. The thing we're seeing is they cut through and accelerate after they hit that stop sign. They come screaming up Riverbend. So your time factor is presuming that people are going the speed limit of 25 miles an hour. As they come up our street, I will tell you they're not going 25 miles an hour. They're going significantly faster. So once they get through that stop sign at Akron, they come screaming up Riverbend because it's a shortcut. They're not taking a shortcut and going the speed limit. They're taking a shortcut and speeding.
So here they're speeding up this way?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is Tom Mickus, and we are next to Catherine, and we agree. I mean, we're kind of at the end of that run before they have to start slowing down to make the right turn onto, I think, Riverbend Way there, that little short piece.
Mm-hmm.
Connects over to South Pitkin, or to Pitkin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just down the street from the folks who spoke. The other thing I'd add here is I'm concerned about once the new development is completed, I don't know the name of that, but I think up towards that Amherst neighborhood. And is Akron an attractive cut through for an additional number of houses as development finishes there?
Yeah, that's a Lanterns development. It has, I think, 50 or 55, 60 new homes.
And also, this is Catherine Pick. I'd also like to add that on from the stop sign to the top of the street on Riverbend, I think we did a count, and there's something like 17 small children that are new to the neighborhood on Riverbend or the cul-de-sac, who were on the sidewalk, who were on the street. It is basically an accident waiting to happen. And unfortunately, as people accelerate up, they're doing stuff, they're on their phone, they're not paying attention. We have so many small children that are now resident on the street. We've sort of cycled through the teenagers to the kids, and the street is a raceway. And the problem with that is something is going to happen. So rather than, I think it's much more foresighted to acknowledge that there is a cut through. People are not going the speed limit. They're small children. Let's head this off before it becomes a problem.
Well, I think
so is the primary.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so is the primary issue once again Amherst and Wildona? Because before, we've had discussions over the years. Amherst used to cut on Wildona, but it seems like, not only were they cutting on Wildona, but now to go up the community, they're cutting significantly through Akron. So yeah, that's just my take.
Sure. Well, from our calculations, there's potential in terms of wanting to get from point A to point B. We have a couple routes, and this is a competing route, and it's shorter. Maybe it takes a little longer, and maybe we need to do something to make it a little longer to try to discourage that cut through traffic. Here's another one we looked at. If you're in this neighborhood over here, and you wanted to, again, go all the way through versus going down Coal Creek, would this particular yellow route be a cut through route, or are you going to be going up this way? So Bill, why don't you explain?
Sure. So the three choices, the violet color, the yellow color, and the red color. So yeah, we would call the violet color on Coal Creek down to Rock Creek Parkway as being the least of consider. That's not the cut through route, and so we calculated how long that might take and how far it was, and we found that it's just a hair longer than the other two, the yellow and the red routes, but it's likely significantly quicker because of the faster speed along Rock Creek Parkway, et cetera. So we thought that might be a 2.2 minute travel time compared to the red route that goes, we would call a cut through along Riverbend over to Rock Creek Parkway, and that route would take probably 3 minutes, so significantly longer, even though it might be a little shorter. And so we are less likely to think of that as a likely cut-through route from the folks that are in the Riverbend East neighborhood. And then the last one was that yellow one that kind of split the difference. Stayed on Riverbend for a while, went down on Indiana, and then along Rock Creek Parkway. And that one also we felt was while it might be a little shorter than the violet route, it's definitely a slower route and has more turns and twists and a slower speed to cut through the neighborhood. So we're less likely to think of the red and the yellow route as likely from a cut through perspective as we were on the Akron route earlier.
Right, and I would think that only the neighborhood here, the Riverbend to the east would use that. I think if you're in Amherst or Waldona, you wouldn't be coming and doing that. You'd probably be using the Akron Riverbend route like that. So
from the
there's
north,
probably not a whole lot of people doing that, but we have some comments on whether Riverbend, that portion, that yellow route is being used as a cut-through route.
I have a question about how you calculate this. So there's a traffic light at Indiana, right? So when you calculate your violet colored path, what do you assume is happening with the traffic light?
Right, we had to make an assumption, and because Rock Creek Parkway the signal will rest in green most of the time for Rock Creek Parkway. So we assumed that most of the time if you went on the violet route, you would be going through that intersection on green. And we didn't assign a significant time penalty for that. Whereas if you were to cut through on the yellow route and come out at that signal, you would have to either make a right on red, or even if you arrived on green, you have to slow down to make a slow speed right turn. So that route did get a penalty to get through that intersection.
Right, and then during school times, of course, that changes dramatically.
Right, and that's when Alex had said earlier, if you do that during school times and you get the penalty of the school zone, then you might be more likely to try to stay off of Rock Creek Parkway.
Right, and you also get the students crossing there at Indiana. We have a long ped time during school hours. So I think during school hours, not only do you have the school zone, but you also have probably more interruptions and traffic on Rock Creek Parkway due to that traffic signal.
Yeah, I would agree with that during the school. I think we see a lot of cut through that comes up Akron, because then they can cut over to Riverbend to get on Indiana is a straight shot, and they don't have to get backed up on that left turn lane to get onto Indiana for the school.
Okay, we're going to move on to some potential solutions. So before I do that, does anybody have any comments on the data or how we've identified the problem? It sounds like there's some cut through where there's concern about the kids playing, concern about speeding. Once you get to that stop sign, you're accelerating up Riverbend. Any other comments you want to make on the data or the problems?
Yeah, this is Greg Tan. I'm on that little stretch of the yellow stretch of Riverbend that we were just talking about. And my observation is that I think there is a bit of cut through coming from the east side of Coal Creek there because of people trying to avoid that stoplight. I mean, I can't say how much there is, but I, in particular, know that there's a dude with a really loud Harley that likes to ride at 6 in the morning. So I know that from my observations, and I can't say how much more there is, but my perception is that people are cutting through to avoid that stoplight because, even though it may normally be resting green, there is a risk, and I feel like people are trying to avoid the risk of getting stopped there, especially if someone has pushed the crosswalk, because that crossing time is really long. So I feel like people are trying to avoid that and just get the easy right turn off of Indiana.
Greg, I've timed that crosswalk. It's only 35 minutes by the school.
All right, let's get to the fun part here. Bill's going to go through a bunch, there's a whole toolbox of tools that you can use for traffic calming. Some may or may not apply to your neighborhood. We've tried to focus on the ones that we thought would apply. We would welcome your ideas as we go through this, but Bill kind of step through some of these measures and talk about the pros and cons of each one.
So when we think about the tools that are effective in this type of neighborhood, we're trying to do we're trying to get people's attention and build in friction in a sense to slow down folks. And we can do that with vertical treatments. We can do that with horizontal treatments, or we can do that with perceptual treatments, or the combination of all three. So when we think about these tools, that's what we're trying to do, is really to build some friction of some sort into the trip through the neighborhood to slow you down. So one of the tools, next one, Alex, is a raised pedestrian crossing. And by this, we mean it's effectively a speed hump at a crosswalk, but they're designed a little different. They're wider and longer and a little more aggressive than a normal speed hump in terms of slowing effect. But the beauty of them is you can provide the need to slow down at a place where you also are encouraging and might expect to see pedestrians. So we look for locations where a raised pedestrian crossing might be a useful tool. Next one. So here's a couple of pictures of those at El Dorado Drive and an aerial view of one on a trail crossing. And so you can see that's a logical place to use a traffic calming treatment. And then, speed humps are always an effective tool. There's probably some of the cheapest tools, but they don't come without a little bit of baggage, because while they slow you down, the folks that live right there, the folks that live on either side of the speed hump, probably two homes on each side of the street, are going to hear the noise, the suspension noise of vehicles with noisy suspensions. They're going to hear that landscape trailer bounce over that thing with the mowers in the back. They're going to hear folks on their brakes slowing down. They're going to hear them on their gas speeding up after the speed hump. And so it's important to think of any of these treatments of using them in a system or a sequence, so that we're not just going to recommend one thing in the middle of a neighborhood. You have to do more than one thing to get people's attention, to get them slowed down, and to keep them slowed down. But here's another example of a speed hump on Castle Peak. Here's another one on Castle Peak. This one is temporary. It allows you to test the effects of a speed hump. You probably wouldn't do this through the winter. But one thing you can see here is the speed hump is tapered down toward the flow lines or the edges of the roadway where the gutter pans are. And so that allows drainage to occur, and it doesn't affect the drainage in the roadway. But what it can do is allow motorists to drive with their right wheel in the gutter pan. And by doing that, they're only half of their car is going over the bump. And actually people do that to try to slow down or to minimize the effectiveness of the speed hump. So you'll see a little bit of that if the humps don't go all the way across.
So, what we do own two of these removable temporary speed humps. So if we come down to wanting to test a location or two, this is what we could try. Obviously this year it's getting a little late in the year to do it because they'll get ripped up by our snow plows. But it's a tool that we have. And also on Castle Peak, it actually got the neighbors' attention, and we really had to be careful where we put those and negotiate with the owners, the adjacent property owners, to get a location that was acceptable to them.
So the last two tools, the raised pedestrian crossing and the speed humps, were vertical treatments. This is an example of a horizontal treatment called neck downs, where we're squeezing the road in the middle of a block or on the approach to an intersection. We're necking it down, making it narrower, making it shorter for pedestrians to cross, but it also we're telling motorists that the road's not so wide anymore, and you probably need to slow down to get through this pinched area. Here's another type of horizontal treatment that causes a motorist to move laterally or side to side as they drive through the area. It's an entry median or a median in the middle of the street that requires a car to wiggle around it, and that has a slowing effect.
And in this, let's talk about the chicane effect with the combination of the neck downs and the median island.
Right, and so we talked earlier about doing things in a system of devices. This combining a median with then the neck down soon after, you cause this chicaning effect of the car driving. They have to move to the outside to get by the median, then they got to move to middle to get by the neck down, and that combination is effective in slowing down vehicles.
Another example of chokers.
Same idea, squeezing the roads from the outside in to try to affect people's, not only affect their horizontal path along the roadway, but also to perceptually narrow the roadway. People drive slower on narrower roads.
What happens with snow plowing in those things?
Well, they have to go around them and know where they are so they don't run into them, and have to go around them and carry the snow around. So here's another treatment. You can see it in the picture here, called a speed feedback sign or a radar sign. You're all familiar with them, that tell you how fast you're going as you approach the sign. And some of them flash red and blue when you're going too fast, and can really get your attention. A lot of the people that are going over the 85th percentile speed aren't necessarily trying to speed. Some are, not arguing that, but some are just not paying attention. And our cars are pretty efficient at going fast. And so you can go too fast without even realize you are. And these devices can get your attention and get some people to slow down. They're not as effective as some of the vertical treatments, but they certainly can help.
Bill, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What about other signs like stop signs?
So I'll give you my opinion on stop signs. And I'm not saying you can't effectively use stop signs to control speed. We typically recommend trying not to use stop signs as a speed mitigation device. Stop signs assign right away between the different approaches, and we want them to be as effective as possible to do that. And when you put in stop signs that aren't warranted, and by that I mean you're driving down the main road and you come to a stop sign, and every day you come to that stop sign and you very, very rarely see somebody coming out of the side road, and you say, why am I stopping here? And you tend to see people start rolling through the stop sign, and little by little they're going through that stop sign without stopping. Now you have a young child coming up to the stop sign that just assumes cars are going to stop for me, and you might have somebody that's not paying attention and not stopping for that stop sign. So we don't want to breed disrespect for the important use of a stop sign. That said, stop signs can be used in the right condition. There are warrants for putting in all-way stop signs, and one of the criteria is that if you have approximately equal traffic on the two different streets, then an all-way stop may make perfect sense. Or if you have a sensitive pedestrian crossing, a stop sign may make perfect sense. So I'm not saying you can't use all-way stops, but I would encourage you to use other things first.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yep.
So these are the types of things that we've thought about. I'm sure you may have some other ideas. Now I'm going to present some ideas about where some of these could go. And it's just for stimulating the conversation. We welcome your ideas, and we really want you to come up with a plan, and we can steer, facilitate, tell you what may work, what may not work. And like the always stop, we can say, well, here's the reason why you not want to do that, or maybe that would work. So
Excuse me, Alex, may I ask a quick question before you get to that?
Sure.
Do you have
And speak up, please. You're pretty low on the volume.
Do you have a thought of the effectiveness between the chicane approach versus a raised hump approach? Is one more effective than the other?
Yes, I do have some thoughts on that. The most effective thing you can do is install speed humps. They force you to slow down. They're uncomfortable to go too fast over them. You know, if you have a nice sports car with a forgiving suspension, might be less effective. But typically, speed humps are the most effective. And wiggling through a chicane, while that will slow you down and it can have a slowing effect, some folks in little cars can get through pretty easily with minimal discomfort. So they're a little bit less effective.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope you can see this, but these are some of my ideas. And again, I want you guys to help out on wherever you can. Stanya talked about an all-way stop. Here's one location that could make sense. Obviously, the traffic on Indiana here is probably pretty close to the traffic on Riverbend. So if we wanted to break up this long stretch, this could be one way of doing it. And this type of T intersection where you have a stub road and a kind of a long local road could make some sense. So that could be one location.
So let me just add something to that. In talking with people, you know, along the Riverbend route and my own personal experiences, yes, you have a stop sign kind of northbound on Indiana. And many, many times people coming up Riverbend have cut that corner and I've had to almost back up or swerve to the right so they don't hit me. And they're going way too
Are they
fast.
doing this? Are they doing this?
No, they're coming up Riverbend from
Westbound to southbound.
Yeah, they're going northbound, and they turn left onto Indiana.
Okay.
And they cut that corner, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is I've noticed if I'm out in the morning around school time, I notice a lot of foot and bicycle traffic on the Riverbend area going to Indiana to go to the Superior Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it seems that maybe a little bit more effective safeguard might be better than a raised pedestrian crossing. It's just kind of my feeling, you know, like a always stop.
All right, so we have, let me give you this next picture.
Sure.
So here we have the park, and we're coming down. We've been struggling, you know, where do you put a pedestrian crossing if you wanted to go to the park?
Yeah.
Do you put it here? We didn't have a ramp on this side, so we didn't put a crossing here. If you look at the photo, this is where we added the crossing recently because we had ramps on both sides. Right. But along this area here, you know, you have this trail coming down. Somewhere in here would be, you know, a good place for a raised pedestrian crossing. Again, where that could be, and do you see people needing to cross Riverbend in any of that area, and would this be used?
Alex, if you put an always stop there, would there be crosswalks as part of that always stop? Not raised crosswalks necessarily, but just I don't know what you call them, but the white lines.
Yeah, like we have here, Yeah, we could put an always stop, and we could put crosswalks on all locations. What is expensive about that is normally when you put a crosswalk, you want to make it ADA accessible. And so you want to have an ADA ramp that leads to the crosswalk. So you're directing, you know, you want to go from sidewalk and you want to provide truncated domes and a ramp down to the crosswalk. So that's, if this is an appropriate location, we could put the crosswalks in, add the ramps in. It'll be a little more expensive than just some paint, but we need some ramps to put it at that location.
Okay. Yeah, walking my kids to school there, I certainly see that that intersection's a bit awkward, and you know, we certainly have to be careful of other drivers coming there. So to me, that does seem like a pretty clear place where we'd want to do something.
Mm-hmm. So that's, you know, again, to me, I think, and we could take traffic counts, but it seems like this would make sense that, sure, Indiana has a higher volume than Riverbend, so it makes sense to stop Riverbend for that traffic and then provide all the protected crossings, you know, with the crosswalks and the ramps and so forth. So, okay, let's talk about over here. We have potential. This is Akron looking west. So we have a section here, no driveways. We could do something here. Obviously, you're at the end of the route, but you could maybe put it more towards the cul-de-sacs over here. But you could add a median island, and we could put chokers on either side, and we could create the chicane effect here as you're coming in. Again, it's at the end. I think from the other side, coming the other direction, that would be effective because you're coming from a long segment. Just want your thoughts on that one.
If I remember earlier in the conversation, I think we identified cut-through traffic on Akron as a key problem there. I'd be curious to hear from the folks on Akron what your thoughts would be on, could we prohibit a right-hand turn if you're coming, I guess that'd be south on Coal Creek, to make a right onto Akron to cut down the traffic volume there, as opposed to putting in something like a median, for example?
The problem is that people come and go. You know, it's like they're either leaving their neighborhood and heading to the upper part of Rock Creek Parkway, or they're coming back from wherever they went shopping or whatever, coming back in. And I could see where a right turn would maybe, you know, it would prevent people from coming through, but it wouldn't prevent them from coming back down Akron to go back to their neighborhood.
Joe, you want to comment on that, on the right turn restriction?
Sure. I mean, you can try to do it. You can build curb extensions and narrow that throat of that Akron where it approaches Coal Creek. You could try to do it. People will drive around things. People will go the wrong way. People will violate those attempts. So you have to accommodate or be ready for the fact that it won't be perfect. And so doing that, you could effectively minimize the cut through in one direction anyway.
Would not be appropriate, right?
Yeah, flips and nails. Yeah, movies, theater strips. But in I was just
so
going to
I'm on
add,
Akron as.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, you know, just doing that median or doing that chicane in that first block of Akron, you're not done, right? I mean, that would get people to slow down in that area. It would change their perception as they come off of Coal Creek into Akron. But as you get around the curve toward where Alex's next red line potentially could be a speed hump there, okay, we've got their attention, we've slowed them down, now we're going to keep them slowed down. So that is, you know, using multiple devices along Akron there may be most effective.
So that would not, I was thinking this was either or, but it would actually could be together.
Oh, yeah, it'd be both. You could do everything on this map, except you probably wouldn't do the all-way stop and the raised pedestrian crossing down there at Indiana. But you would definitely want to do more than just one thing on Akron.
Okay.
So you could have a speed bump here. You have a all-way stop here. You could put another speed hump as they accelerate out of the stop condition. So you have 3-4 impediments as you come through what you're perceiving as the cut-through route.
So now you're coming from Amherst and you got a decision to make, and you're going to Costco and you say, well, do I want to cut through on Akron? Maybe I still do because it's considerably shorter, but you have to do it with the acknowledgement that you're going to go slower. And that's kind of the goal that we're after here is we're not necessarily going to close streets, but we're going to make sure that when people use them, they go slow.
So I'm on Akron, and so yeah, I'm kind of for something down there like we were talking about with the median or something to prevent traffic just getting onto Akron. I'm less inclined to want a speed hump close to the house, especially because some of the, like where my house is, it gets, especially in the winter, it just gets so much ice built up out into about the middle of the street because of the way the sun is angled with our houses and trees that, you know, I'm probably against the speed hump there. I'm kind of wondering if you look at this as a holistic system from Akron all the way up to Riverbend up to where it gets up at the top of the map there where people are trying to get out back, yeah, right there where your arrow is.
Mm-hmm.
If we choke that top area with like a median island or something, does those two choke points at the very end and beginning kind of, is that enough of a deterrent for people to say, hey, this is just taking longer or it just seems longer, I'm not going to even get on this route?
So you're asking if you did something at both ends but nothing in the middle? And it probably wouldn't work that well.
Okay.
There's not enough room at the top. There's absolutely not enough room to put in a median at the top of Riverbend.
So are you talking
on Riverbend Way?
Here?
No, on Riverbend Street, at the top of Riverbend Street, where it, yeah, up there, there's not enough room to put a median in there.
Right here?
Yeah.
I'll measure how wide that is, Alex.
There's no way.
Oops. I think it's 30.
It's like it's about 30, 33, 34 feet wide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you could definitely do a median in that block. You'd have to restrict parking, but probably not much parking on that street anyway. The idea is to squeeze and narrow to cause people to either not want to go there or slow down if they do.
Aren't people already slowing down there?
Pardon?
Like, aren't people already slowing down there? There's a stop sign.
Yeah, they're probably already not speeding on that short stretch there. But the median entry is kind of, again, trying to change the character to say, hey, I'm cutting through now. Should I be cutting through rather than staying out on Rock Creek Parkway?
The other thing we could put a choker here. I don't know if people are cutting this corner. Oh, yeah. Sorry, you probably can't see me. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, we can still see.
No, we can see.
If you're talking about cutting off of Riverbend Way to go down Riverbend Street, there's a lot of non-compliance of people rolling through that stop sign.
Over here? Down by Akron?
No. So go back up to Riverbend Way.
Mm-hmm.
That one.
Yeah, there you go.
Right there.
So right there's a stop sign so that you can either go into the court or you can go down Riverbend to the southeast. There's several people on here I think could probably, reaffirm this, but I see people all the time rolling through that stop sign.
Right.
That's an affirmative for sure.
That stop sign is entirely optional.
For some people, yeah.
Alex, I think you were maybe going into discussion on there's some neck downs or other maybe horizontal things we could do in Riverbend. I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yeah, the neck downs or the chokers. I was thinking that this could be a fast, and you could put a choker here if that's a problem. Yeah. Down in this location. I mean, the problem with any place where you have all these driveways, that's really difficult to do, to narrow the street because you have parking and so forth. So that's a difficult place to do anything except speed humps. But you have other opportunities, along here, certainly along here, but I don't think that's the problem. It sounds like this is the problem.
Alex, another spot on Akron is you have that pedestrian crossing at right there. And there's a trail. I mean, that is, unfortunately, it's fairly close to the stop sign at Akron and Riverbend, but still that would be a place where a raised crossing would have a dual benefit.
And, maybe something here, Bill, maybe we, if this is 32 feet, maybe we could put, narrow that crossing with some device. I don't know if you can do it here, but certainly this way, put some like choker islands on either side.
Yep.
To narrow the crossing width rather than a raised crossing because you're right at the intersection.
Right. And so we'd have to be conscious of drainage and things. So you'd have to be creative, but it could be done with narrowing.
So the data that you guys collected November last year. So if you look at the map here and you're at the intersection of Akron and Riverbend, and you're going to go northbound or upslope, yeah, right there. So the data collection was basically at the fourth house on the right there. And yes, right up there. The highest speed on going upslope was 36 miles an hour. And it's like, yeah, maybe they rolled through the stop sign on a right-hand turn there. But by the time they get up to, about 3 houses away from Riverbend Way to turn right onto that, they're probably over 40. Because we can hear them accelerating coming up the street.
Yeah.
But at the fourth house there at 36 miles an hour, that's quite a fast acceleration there.
Yeah, so Stan's point, I'm interested in right there at Montgomery Court and Riverbend. That's where my house is actually, right?
Are you over here or over there? Or up there?
Where that car is, I guess, in the
Right
part of
there.
the street. Yeah. I'm curious, again, back to the chokers or neck downs. Are there options to kind of do that where a cul-de-sac meets a street there? Is that a possibility?
Well, I think here, this looks like it's a side yard.
Yeah, it's massive.
So,
It is, yeah, that's my house.
So you could be able to put something here that kind of, juts out to provide, some deflection there. The parked vehicle over there, but this is an area
why
here.
wouldn't you just put a speed bump in there and be done with it? I mean, if you're going to do it properly. Why not just put a speed bump in?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we had on the plan was a speed hump somewhere in this area.
Yeah, I'm
You
not.
couldn't put it right at the cul-de-sac because then you're turning over it. But you could put it in this area here and that's, I think, again, when you guys say you want some speed humps, I think we need to go out and talk to, if you're going to put one here, these people are going to be impacted. You may be impacted there. So we want to get buy-in from those residents that are going to have the speed hump right near their houses.
Yep, makes sense.
So if we look at what we were talking about, if you put the map up, then.
Okay.
So if, from what I heard, so if we just take the Akron route coming from Coal Creek, so if we kind of choke that a little bit somehow with a median or something people were talking about, and then maybe a speed hump by that open space where Akron meets Riverbend, maybe a little speed hump there, and then you're talking about another speed hump on Riverbend, and then maybe at the top you're going to help with that stoplight, with that stop sign that's optional. Maybe choke that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 choke points. So do we think that'd be sufficient enough to change behavior?
I think, yeah, if you have 3 or 4 like that in a pretty short stretch. Bill, can you measure that from Akron to Riverbend here?
Yeah, just a second.
This is the key stretch you guys are thinking about. that about 500 feet?
From Akron up to Riverbend, that is about 750 feet.
And I think, having measures, 300-400 feet apart is really effective, because it's hard to accelerate, pretty quickly to a high speed in 300-400 feet. Although you're saying that these guys are doing it.
As we're speaking about this, I'm sitting next to the road and people are screaming up and down it. While we've been talking, there have been multiple cars who are not going 25 miles an hour. I mean, they are speeding. People accelerate. As they come up the street, they accelerate. It's just a fact.
Okay. All right. So let's focus in. Stan, will you, let's go over some of these things, and let's add some to this graphic if you want to. So is there support for looking at this, or is this not, you don't think it's going to be effective? What do you think about the median island, in or out?
Yes.
I'm
one from
for,
Abby.
yes,
I'm
on
for
Akron, I'm for it.
Yeah,
I'm for it down there.
Okay, so we'll keep that in. And again, I'll go over the next steps, but what we end up wanting to do is developing a plan with these types of measures, and then send it out to the entire neighborhood, get their feedback, find out, if any neighbors are opposed to specific devices and how they feel about the whole plan. So this is your plan that we want to, get out to the neighborhood. So we have the median island. What about the speed hump? What was the?
I'm against the speed hump there. If you move it up to by the crosswalk, I may be for it. Or maybe I would be.
You want us to neck down, do some protection here?
Yes.
I agree. And like Greg says, because right where that speed hump would go, we do have a lot of problems with very heavy ice buildup, and that seems like it could contribute to it.
I think
And there's lots of people who blow through that three-way stop sign at Akron and Riverbend too. So having something not too far from that is, would slow them down.
What about the idea of a raised pedestrian crosswalk where Alex says his pointer right now along that trail, as opposed to the speed bump just to the right?
Is this this home here is coming off, so we don't have a driveway right here. Driveway's over there.
No.
Correct. It's in the cul-de-sac.
Yes, their front door is on Akron, but the driveway is on the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Can we relocate this and maybe get it in this area here? Maybe just realign that trail, or is there something in this spot here? Is there a big tree, or can I move it?
There's some big pine trees there, and the crosswalk that you guys painted in there a while back, it's quite effective. My wife and I have walked that across that street there, and cars will stop for you if you're standing there on the sidewalk most of the time.
Okay, so this could be a good location for a raised pedestrian crossing.
Yeah, and you already have it marked as a pedestrian crossing, and people have probably gotten used to that.
Yeah, Alex is trying to move it a little bit away from the intersection so that people aren't
I see.
turning around, making a 90-degree turn up and over the top of this raised crossing. It just.
I get it.
But
Thanks
if we
for
could,
clarifying that.
if we could kink it a little bit and get it a little bit away from that intersection, I think a raised crossing could work right there.
Okay, so this moves over to here at its raised crossing. That kind of stays in. We look at some feature over here, maybe a chicane effect, go to median island and chokers. Someone had some ideas on this intersection?
It's a three-way stop currently. I don't know what else you would do there.
Yeah, you would have minimal effect on speeding since you're already stopping folks there, or almost stopping folks there. But it could narrow pedestrian crossings, for example.
But that's three, at least we have three in this this stretch here.
Right.
Right.
Now let's move up to speed hump. What about the location, or is that an appropriate measure? How do people feel about that as a measure?
I think you can move it closer to Montgomery Court.
Yeah, that's my thinking too.
So in this area here?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's basically my backyard and my side yard, and it's all, yeah, on one side of the street.
Okay, if I go over here, am I going to affect parking on that side?
You're in between two driveways, Alex. It looks like it would fit right there.
Okay.
Has to be some kind of a speed hump on East Riverbend. I'm sorry my house isn't further down because I would be perfectly fine with it being in front of my house, but I'm so much further up, it's not helpful.
Yeah,
I was having a hard
agree
time
with
picking
that.
it.
I agree with the necessity there. We certainly see a lot of problems.
Particularly
Okay,
with
so
your
we-
three littles, you know?
Yep.
That would put it about 420 feet from the Riverbend intersection to the west there. So that's actually not a bad spot if you slide it over to where your cursor is, Alex.
Okay. And then what about this stretch? Do we have enough now?
I think that's probably sufficient. The fastest speed on the data you collected going down sloper to the southeast, I think was only 33 miles an hour. People that because of that curve there, they can't quite see around, particularly when Matt's got his truck out there. And so people swing out to the left, and some of them slow down because they're not sure what's coming from the Riverbend Akron intersection.
I think that combination right there would have a pretty good effect on the speeding through the area.
I'm just modifying my drawing here, so I'll get back in a minute.
Yeah, I think the other thing we talked about was that all-way stop down at Indiana in Riverbend there, and probably doing away with the potential raised pedestrian crossing.
It seems like an always stop at that intersection is necessary because there are just so many little kids going to school. It's just, you know, it feels when you're sitting there and watching people, some people stop, some people don't. It's fairly shocking.
So that always stop, Alex, then like, as you mentioned, would include curb ramps and crosswalks so that pedestrians, the kids we've heard about, can cross and through that area from the park over to Indiana toward the school.
So
right.
aren't they already ramped down on the south side of Riverbend there, bracketing Indiana? You would just have to, if you did one or two crosswalks going across Riverbend, that would be where you'd have to do your ramping, right?
Right, okay.
Yeah, the ramping across Indiana are there, Alex. It's just the ramps on the north side.
Yeah. Okay.
Second of that, okay.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about that always stop there. That's just an awkward turn, especially when you got kids kind of coming in towards school.
Agreed.
Hey, in terms of priority, I'm on Akron again. So I would rather try the median approach first, and if we couldn't do the raised crossing, see what the hump on Riverbend does to slow down the whole route, and then if we came back and looked at the raised crossing, I would be fine with that.
So maybe we could,
if you're looking to prioritize things.
Yeah, maybe we can do something to narrow this down kind of in a low-cost way to enhance this crossing there.
Are you talking about the ped crossing on Akron, Alex?
Yeah, am I not sharing this? Do you see my screen? Or
I don't see your cursor anymore.
okay, so let me just try it again. I'm sorry, here it is. There
you go.
So right here, yeah. So maybe enhance that crossing.
I think the suggestion was maybe try the median to the right there first, and then see if it's still necessary to do the raised crossing.
Yeah, I would
Correct.
argue that if you do the entry median over there by Cold Creek, it's by the time you get over there by the ped crossing, that's you haven't slowed them down. I mean, I would think you'd want to do something in the vicinity of that ped crossing, whether it's neck downs or the raised crossing, one or the other.
Okay, that's fine.
So we got all this. These two seem to be, too close together.
Yeah, I think we're thinking not the race crossing there. So
you
you
want
have to do it before we always stop.
Yeah, let's eliminate that for now and just go out with that, enhance the crosswalks.
Yeah,
that'd be my vote.
You get Sadie.
Did we have anything at the top there that weren't people complaining about that stop sign that was optional?
Up here?
Is it possible to work out something with the cops to actually enforce that?
We hear that all the time, and that's a logical thing to ask for. In the long run, it's probably the least effective thing because it's not self-enforcing. The police can't be there regularly enough. They don't have the funding to be there and the staffing to be there regularly enough to affect a change that's lasting. It'll work while they're there, but then people very quickly go back to what they were doing.
Okay.
So if these measures that we're talking about on Akron and the northern portion of Riverbend are successful, have you made a judgment about what the alternative route will be? Are you expecting people to go all the way to Parkway, or are they going to start using that yellow route through the southern portion of Riverbend to Indiana?
Bill, you want to try that?
Well, I would answer to say, are we done? Are we not going to do anything to Riverbend between the Always Stop and Cold Creek Drive? I mean, that's a fairly long stretch with gentle curves. So if we don't do anything in that stretch, then I think that yellow route may be fairly attractive. They still will have to stop to turn left as they're westbound on Riverbend to turn left onto Indiana. That will slow folks down, but it still may be a way to bypass the school zone and the effect of that signal out on Rock Creek. So I'm not sure that this prevents the yellow route.
So Bill, you said earlier on one of the charts that from Cold Creek along Riverbend to Akron was about 1,700 feet. The Always Stop was probably around 700 or 800 feet. So that gives you 1,000 feet or so unimpeded between Cold Creek and Indiana.
Yeah, I'll try to measure that for you as if I can get back to it.
Yeah. I think I saw 1,700 feet on the chart.
Yeah, it was from Cold Creek to Akron.
Right.
But now we put this in, so we've shortened this to probably 1,000 or so, maybe 1,100.
So
yeah, it's about 1,100 from the Always Stop over to Cold Creek on Riverbend.
So really quickly, I don't remember, like earlier in the meeting, we were talking about that intersection where Riverbend turns on to Indiana to get to Rock Creek Parkway. And there was discussion of like an elevated crosswalk to kind of address a lot of issues. The kids going to school, an area to get from Indiana across to the park and the pond. And then it seems like we've come back to this after talking about the Akron part, and the elevated crosswalks at that intersection seem to be kind of just dropped. Was there a decision made just to not do that and only do a stop sign with painted crosswalk?
Well, I was trying to get some consensus,
Okay.
and maybe it's like we start with this,
Yeah.
and we start with the speed hump and these two features. We do maybe some necking down or shortening of the crossing here, and then come back to it, and look at, do we need raised pedestrian crossings? I mean, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah. I guess the cost might be an issue, but and I guess it doesn't really address like where that always stop is at Indiana there. It doesn't really address the long stretches on either side of it, because that's that longest stretch that you showed earlier in the meeting of 1,700 feet. But it just, there were a lot of comments about a lot of kids before and after school kind of in that intersection. So it seemed like a raised.
I mean, this would probably be the logical location near this trail.
For an elevated crosswalk.
Right.
Yeah.
So Alex, one other thought that I'm having is, if you stay on Riverbend east of the always stop and go east a ways, keep going, a little more there, that block between the two cul-de-sacs, and its side yard frontage on both north and south sides might be an ideal place for a speed hump.
That's pretty close to Coal Creek. So those two cul-de-sacs are Proctor and Siebert Court.
Yep.
And right, there's kind of like, an area where there's no driveways and stuff, but that's pretty close to the Coal Creek. So I don't know if that'd be too close.
It's about, what, 300 maybe?
Yeah, at the most.
It's 335 feet to the middle of that block.
The middle of that.
And so that's, I mean, in the worst cases of speeding, we've done these devices every 400 feet. So that's not that far. I mean, that's enough distance to get up some speed as you're going westbound on Riverbend. I mean, if you could move it a little bit farther west and center it between Coal Creek and the always stop, put it on the other side of Proctor, but it's not as convenient because then you have front yards.
Yeah, there's six driveways right there. That would probably not be ideal.
Maybe you could put it just west of Proctor, but it's close to the intersection there. But still, it could probably be there a little bit farther west.
Right, and then I mean, if you have one there, and eventually put the raised pedestrian crosswalk there, I mean, that pretty much takes care of this stretch here.
For sure.
That could work.
Again, the volume on this was fairly low to make that type of investment, but be nice to monitor, verify that volume. That seemed fairly low. 280 was not that high.
Right, but it's probably going to change once you put the measures in on that Akron Riverbend route. On the one side.
Yeah, your data from November last year, you had the first counter, if you just kind of go down the trail sidewalk to Riverbend, right a little bit to your right. Yeah, that's where you had your counter, and the highest speed westbound was 33. And then your counter number 2 was basically over by the next cul-de-sac. And between those two counters, the highest speed that you got on number 2 was 40 miles an hour. So that should break up that 40 with the always stop at Indiana. But yeah, then you got to go down and, do I want to break up that 33 that you had real data on?
Well, I like the concept that maybe we start with these 3 measures, and then here's potential for other ones. If these don't do the trick, we have a raised pedestrian crossing here, one here, and then a speed hump there. And that's multiple measures that should, make some of these routes less attractive than certainly what they are today.
Yeah, I think in conjunction with some monitoring as the Lanterns neighborhood builds out and folks move in there would be interesting to look at over the next year or two as well.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, just kind of a slight side path here. What does the budget profile look like for some of these things getting done for next year?
Well, we have $50,000 a year budgeted for traffic calming.
Okay.
And then we met the last week with the Yarrow neighborhood and got some of their input. So they're a little bit ahead of you, but not very far. This isn't too, obviously this is low cost, but the ramps are something that we, probably take out of our street maintenance budget. It's not really, it's more pedestrian protection, and they probably should have been there from day one. So I wouldn't count those. That's, probably going to be 20 or 30,000. We won't do much here, and then a speed hump, maybe 15,000. So
right.
Could easily eat up the whole year's budget, but.
Thanks for the insights into the costs and what have you.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk. I know it's getting late. We promised that we're at the end of our time. I just want to go over next steps. So we'll take, I think what I'll do is develop a kind of interim plan that we just talked about, and then more a long range plan, adding those two raised crossings, maybe that other speed hump. Take that. We have a meeting with the Transportation Safety Committee on October 5th. So we can report back. We'd like, some of you all to be there. We'll report back, get their endorsement for what could be sent out to the neighborhood. And we'd like to have a much, here we have 10, 12 people here. We'd like to get the whole neighborhood involved. Here's the plan. What do you think about it? Maybe a vote. Yes or no, you like the plan, and then specific comments on the various measures, especially those that are where they're right next to their driveway or so forth. Get input like that with a survey, and then take that back to the TSC. Hopefully that can be all done. We have another meeting with TSC in December, so we can get the survey out late October. We can report back, and they can endorse a plan to adopt in December that we can implement early next year. Comments, feedback on that?
That sounds very straightforward.
Can we exclude the Akron folks? I meant the Amherst folks.
So they're going to keep you out of their neighborhood now.
Hey,
yeah.
Before we break up, I missed a couple of addresses at the beginning. Can I ask Carolyn, are you still on the call?
I am.
What's your address?
930 East Riverbend Street.
Okay, and how about Nancy? Is Nancy still on? No, Nancy. What? Pardon, Nancy? Okay. I have a Greg Wilson. Is there another Greg on the call?
Yeah, this is Greg Tan. I'm with Melinda Tan. She introduced herself at the beginning.
Oh, okay, same address. 1181 East Riverbend.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. And we never heard from Hans or Henzi?
You did get a Susan Ogilvie dialed in during the meeting.
I did. I'm so sorry I was late.
Okay, what is your address, Susan?
I'm 940 East Riverbend Street.
940 East Riverbend. Okay. So the only one I don't have is Nancy. I want to say Nancy Devers. That's the only one. Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Sorry, I joined late. This is
Okay.
Abby Krolik. I live on East Kirk Way, so off of South Gibson Court in Riverbend. I had to join late too because of pickups and
What
kid
your address on
activities.
East Kirk Way?
It's 900 East
900.
Kirk Way. I
Okay.
did have an additional question too about the speed data. The town website doesn't have the speed data for this study up yet. I mean, I see
Okay,
it.
what we'll be doing after this meeting, we'll be writing up notes and developing some of these graphics for the plans, and then we'll be posting it on the neighborhood traffic calming website under Riverbend Akron. We'll call it Riverbend Akron.
Gotcha.
And then also, if any of you want to email me your email addresses, I can keep in contact with you as we move through the process. And if you got the notice, my email should be on that notice. And you can always find it on the website.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Alex, Sophie, the original data from November of 2019 is on the website for December of 2019. Alex and Bill presented that information at the December traffic calming meeting.
Yeah, so it's there. It's probably hard to find because you don't know it was in December. So we can maybe move that or put a copy under the Riverbend Akron and have the notes from this meeting, that memo with all the data, a link to that, and anything we end up doing with Riverbend Akron, have it under the Riverbend Akron paragraph on the website. Have all those links. So let's break now, and Stan, if you can, appreciate your leadership on this. And again, October 5th is the meeting of TSC that we report back. So we appreciate you and any of you attending that meeting. It'll probably be another virtual meeting, so it shouldn't be that hard to get out, and you can attend bits and pieces. And the agenda should have a time period for the discussion on Riverbend Akron.
Alex, thank you very much. And to Bill too, really appreciate you putting this all together. And we've waited a long time to see it, but I really like the direction that you're kind of taking us here.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
Okay, it's your plan. Let's get it going. Thanks.
All right.
Right.
Take care, everybody. Thanks. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Be in touch with you, Bill. I know you're leaving town.